Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Guilty as Charged podcast. Steven is doing his cool media credentialed things, so he'll do his own separate notebook video breakdown of all the notes he took today from camp later tonight when he gets home. But right now, Alex and I are doing an instant reaction to this. I just got home. He just got back to the hotel, and we're just going to react kind of live, minus an hour drive for me, so as live as we can get it. Let's start with what I think everyone wanted to see today, which was Joe Alt versus the pass rush. You know, this is the Chargers' first practice with pads. I think everyone's wondering, how's Joe Alt going to do? I'll start with you. How did you feel Joe Alt did today in what we saw from him? And then you can also throw in what Steven said too.
Yeah, so I felt he was pretty good. It seemed like he had some reps where he was strong against Bosa. They kind of were rotating him in between left tackle, right tackle, because it was Slater who started at first, and then Slater came out, and then basically between Pipkins and Alt the whole practice, they just went back with left and right tackle. So, and then when obviously Pipkins would be a guard sometimes. No, I thought he looked pretty good. Nothing that was like, I did think Joey Bosa tried to go a little hard at him occasionally. And Joey Bosa at his OTAs and minicamp did say oh, I'm gonna put my helmet in his chest and we'll see what he is like then. So you got to see a little bit of that today. And I think if by my rough count, I had just from what I saw, Bosa kind of basically being sort of a wash with Alt twice or getting beat by Alt, and then he got one sack on Alt later on. So pretty competitive matchup. Iron sharpens iron. I will say it is, and this is what Steven said to me, but he said watching Slater work in practice is so different, just when you're on the field, and that's what he said. Because he had some reps against Khalil Mack where Khalil Mack was just not getting in there right from the jump. So he even talked about just seeing how Slater setup was different. It was nice to see all the Chargers kind of offensive line pieces working together. Some communications things that probably have to be worked on, and I'm sure that'll come as they keep switching guys in between right tackle, left tackle, right guard. We'll see when Slater returns to practice on a more full-time capacity, kind of what it starts to look like, but looked pretty good today.
Yeah, so I'll start with the Rashawn Slater stuff. So he was out there for individual or position group stuff. Then during some parts of 11-on-11 and most of it, Joe Alt would play some left tackle, and then Trey Pipkins would play right tackle, Jamari Sawyer at guard. Nothing we haven't heard already before, but same kind of standard thing. Rashawn Slater was out there, I think, for one series of 11-on-11s. I don't know if he was just testing things out or what. But then it went back to Joe Alt at left tackle. And then Rashawn ended up going back into the facility. I don't know what for. So overall,
I know what for. I don't know if it's he took a bathroom break.
Oh, that's what it was for.
Yeah. He was not going unplanned injury thing, and he wasn't with trainers.
Okay,
he just
around the blocking. All right, so, good to know.
When you gotta drop kids off at the pool, you gotta go. So.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, well then he was working through something, as we've been hearing these days. Joe Alt he's been playing a lot of left with Rashawn Slater out. He's also been playing right, so he played both today. I assume that's going to be the plan. Some people disagree, hey, that's really good. He should have, he'd be able to play different spots. I think we're all on the same page that he should just stick to one spot, and that would be nice. And if it is left tackle, then let him stick there, because I don't want him to play 2/3 of off-season training camp and all that at left, and then face Max Crosby in week 1 and play right. So that's all that. We'll see how that shapes out. So I don't want to spend too much time on that. As far as Joe Alt goes, Steven said in one-on-ones there was a set of back-to-back reps against Joey Bosa, and it was a stalemate both times. It's hard for an offensive lineman to straight up win unless it's a pancake or a knockdown, I guess, right? So it looks more like a stalemate, which is a win for Joe Alt in that scenario. So that's good. That was far on the field, so I couldn't see that. Then we see him on 11-on-11s, and Joe Alt held his own, I think, every single rep. It wasn't just against Joey. I don't remember seeing much of Khalil, but it was a lot of Joey or Bud Dupree and some Thule. I don't remember Khalil Mack, but I might have missed it. but I think he only had, of what I watched, one loss. Now it was Joey's famous like two-hand swipe. If you've seen anyone break down Joey Bosa film, or you've seen him on like a highlight or something, that move is almost signature to him. It's like what's so great about him. I think people forget that Joey Bosa is one of the most advanced pass rush guys. He just isn't on the field. So he beat Joel pretty bad on the right side after Joel had been playing left side for most of practice. He goes to the right. Joel, I think stalemates or wins 2 reps, and then Joey won with that two-hand swipe on the right. It was a clean sack, like excellent move from Joey. But otherwise, it really seemed like a very strong day for Joel. I thought that the anchor was there. I thought the independent hand placement and striking was there. I thought a couple of times he was able to use his hands really well to like angle down and push Joey like into the dirt and get him outside of the arc so he can never, officially bend and beat Joel at any point. What I saw today was, I made the title of the video like Joel makes me feel things. I truly like watching him. It's like, okay, like this guy definitely has it. I don't know what his ceiling is going to be, and I think that's going to be difficult to reach if you're switching back and forth on different sides. But today I saw anchor, I saw independent hand strikes, I saw grip strength, I saw athleticism, I saw anchor, I saw everything that he had in his toolbox where he could win at Notre Dame and why his pass blocking efficiency has been so good for so long. All that today was on display. Yeah. And then also Joey Bosa beat him once on an excellent rep that I hope he learns from. But otherwise, as far as Joel's debut in pads goes, I thought it was pretty excellent. And I'm glad that Joey Bosa, and if it ends up being Khalil the next day or whatever, I'm glad Joey Bosa is beating him with these advanced moves, because he will not see much like this, at different points through the season. It won't be as difficult as the 1, 2, 3, 4 of this edge room. So I'm glad he's going through it now. But otherwise, a very, very solid debut.
Yeah, no, look pretty good. And honestly, I mean, as much as we would ideally like to see him, just stay at right tackle and hope, obviously Slater's healthy, it's probably better for him to just kind of do as much as he can, right, to some extent, and get those reps in at left or right tackle. God forbid, obviously, anything happens later or alt, during the regular season, depending on where they, need to switch those guys. And they've been, constantly rotating and playing around with that, because when Slater first went down on Saturday, that was when they put, I think, Salyer at left tackle, and then Trey was at right. Then they put Joe Alt there at left tackle, and then Salyer right guard, Pippin's right tackle. So, having the versatility to some extent that I think Salyer gives you, and the options he gives you is sort of your swing guard / swing tackle option, even if he's not going to be starting on this offensive line. I think that's actually a pretty good thing for both Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater, depending on where, their bodies are, if they're injured. And I think that's pretty good overall for the line.
Yeah, definitely. Another offensive lineman that stood out today, again, partially from Steven's notes, was Zion Johnson. Yeah. And specifically, I thought the chemistry that he had with Joe Alt at left tackle, because there were a couple of times, and, Stevens pointed out, and because he's, offensive line dork, he pointed out how often they've been working on chemistry and picking up stunts in practice, the stuff that he notices that he loves. And that really showed up today. I think Rashawn Slater, part of it for him has always been a bit of a cerebral, not identifying things issue. Whether it's him or Bradley Bozeman helping him, or the chemistry with Joe Alt, or whatever it is, he looked really good today. A couple of times they threw stuff at Joe Alt. I'm looking for a one-on-one that ended up being a stunt, a twist, whatever it was. And Joe Alt picked up his guy, or if he wasn't quite there and someone got maybe on the inside of him, Zion Johnson was there to help him out and knock the player over. I mean, Zion, Steven talked about how he went up against Morgan Fox a couple of times today, and he said he just destroyed Morgan Fox. Zion is actually stronger. It's not just a funny funhouse mirror, photo of his arm looking like he's I mean, it is, but he's Zion is actually stronger, and he looks stronger, which makes sense. He's been training with Duke Manyweather. You've seen all the workouts. He's at practice oftentimes glued to the hip of his other offensive lineman, like Rashawn. He's always next to Rashawn, always next to Bradley. I think that's really helpful for him. So what I watched today, Zion looks awesome. No real surprise, because the D tackle room isn't great by any means, but all you can do is play who's across from it. He looked great. So Joe Alt, very solid debut, one misstep. I thought Zion looked great. So overall, I didn't pay much attention to the right side of the line unless it was Joe Alt. Our focus is on these first round picks and maybe Bradley, but overall, I thought the guys that I watched, they did a very good job today, and that's all I can ask for on day one.
Yeah. Even just from seeing it from the stands, like the communication from, the Friday practice I was at Saturday to today, like, I think Zion catches a lot of flack for like late, down, just mishaps last year, but it wasn't just on him, right? Like it was the communication of like the offensive line as a whole, like just not really ever being what it should have been last year. And I think, Stephen talking about like how dialed in Mike Devlin like has some of these guys, and how active they want to keep this rotation of guys kind of during camp, given the Slater thing, and just trying new things, trying new spots, seeing where everybody kind of falls. I think that's a good change from last year, where I felt like as soon as the Lindsley thing happened last year, there really was no comeback from that, and it felt that way the whole year. So to have some options depending on like who goes down, and trusting sort of the depth of your offensive line a little bit more as well with Salyer in the mix, I think it's a huge step forward for this offensive line program.
Yeah, it is. Real quick, because I just remembered it, Brendan Hymas did leave today. Was it reported what that was? I don't want to say it loud if it wasn't.
No, I think Popper just tweeted that he left after one-on-ones.
Okay. So the Hymas left. I think he might have returned to the field, but not practiced. So the backup center is Bucky Williams, the undrafted free agent. So if you're wondering who the third center would be, it's him. And if for some reason they're concerned about Hymas for any reason, congratulations, Bucky Williams, on being the guy to make the roster. So did not watch him specifically, but that's a note there. I want to get to the skill position players on offense, and one in particular, of course. A lot of quote tweets on a particular video, so we'll talk about that. I do want to talk about the defense first, and then we'll get back to Quentin Johnston. So as far as I could tell, especially in the 2-minute drill, like red zone period that they were doing, the defense stopped, one, because of the Joey Bosa stack. They stopped the first team offense and the second team offense for sure in those reps, or in that series. So I think they moved a little bit with Justin Herbert in the offense, but then Joey Bosa got that sack on third down, brought in the field goal unit, and they kind of like faked the kick. Then the second time, I believe Chris Rumpf won off the left tackle, and that was one of the sacks that pushed the offense back. And they just had like an underneath throw to Josh Palmer, I think, after that. So they had to kick a field goal too. So it's tough. We didn't really focus on the defense a ton, because like Joe Alt's the offensive guy, McConkey's the offensive guy, and then Colson's not out there. So really kind of focus more on the offense. But I thought the defense, from just a broad perspective, did a pretty good job today. I don't know who specifically was better. I think everyone kind of chipped in a little bit, but they were holding the offense. And I think Herbert struggled at times with like timing. There were drops, obviously, which we'll get to. But the defense, I think, did a really good job messing up the offense enough to get them out of a rhythm.
Yeah, I think particularly you just saw it in those red zone situations too. The wide receivers were not creating like a ton of separation on any of the corners. They stayed pretty glued on. And I just think the defense tried a couple things that like flustered the offense. I remember particularly, a couple plays just kind of got blown dead, either due to sack or like protection issues. There was one where Derwin, I think, came screaming off the left side, and that wasn't on Joe Wall as giving him the sack. That was actually on Patterson, who was supposed to be, protecting. So, I think there's some like little just protection kinks to kind of work out with the offense, but the defense, kind of threw the kitchen sink, for lack of a better term, at them today. And there were kind of wins for both sides, but I would say overall, I would say defense won today, specifically, in those red zone drills, where it felt like on Saturday, the connection that Herbert had with McConkey, or even on Friday with Chark, they were able to kind of get it done in the red zone on offense. And today, the defense was a lot stingier, at least on the first.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up them throwing the kitchen sink at the offense, because that could just be how they play defense this year. Like, they don't have the corners, they don't have the defensive tackles to really be the Ravens defense and blitz less like McDonald does. We talked about how Minter is probably going to have to crank it up out of necessity, and that's fine. I don't expect a ton out of the defense, other than maybe good fundamentals, because there's just not a ton of players outside of the great edge rush group and the safeties. I'm not so sure about many other players on this defense, especially with Colson out. So, yeah, Derwin James, first off, I was definitely worried, like, oh, gosh, did Joe Alt just forget that Derwin James was a thing? But if it was just a pure, like, running back, and we've heard people say it was the running back, then that's a running back issue, not a Joe Alt issue. But glad to see them, doing that and trying as much as they can to disrupt the timing of the offense, because that's kind of all they have. So it's on Minter to over scheme and figure out how to deploy this defense. So, yeah, good there. JT Woods was safety, 4 again. Well, technically 3. Gilman was not at practice today. It's not an injury issue. I don't know if that's been discussed, so I'm not going to get into it, but I wouldn't be concerned, is what I'm saying.
It's Harbaugh announced that it was he wasn't at practice due to having a child.
Yeah, so congratulations to Alohi Gilman. I guess I should have worn my Alohi crew shirt today, but okay, good. I wasn't sure. I know that's kind of a touchy thing, so great, good for him. Congratulations, go do that. You don't need to be out there. But yeah, it was AJ Finley being the second safety, then some JT Woods, then some Tony Jefferson. So nothing changed there. As far as the defense goes, anything else you can think of before we get to the wide receivers?
I'm sure that'll be the bulk of the episode. Yeah, so I think that, Finley has been pretty firmly safety 3, I would say, behind Derwin James and Alohi. And then, I'm curious kind of where Tony Jefferson fits into all this, because we still kind of like all projected him making the roster due to his connection with Joe Ortiz and obviously being in the system before, but he's pretty much consistently on the third team. I don't think I saw him really any day this week take like second team reps, maybe a little bit on Friday if I don't clearly remember, but it has been Finley, and then I would say some mix of like Woods and Jefferson, but Finley pretty clearly in that third spot. And I think just what we were talking about with different ways to design defensive pressures, right? I think they're going to need it, right? Like, they're a little light on the interior in terms of talent, because it's like, I love Poona Ford. Poona Ford's last great year was like 4 years ago, right? Where it's like you just kind of need, I think, more ways to kind of problem solve. And even as much as we love Morgan Fox, right? Morgan Fox is awesome. He's obviously not an every down player, kind of due to some of those run, deficiencies, right? Not a player you can have out there, certainly on obvious like rushing downs. So I think that they're going to need, until they sort of 2 years from now, like figure out what exactly they want on the defensive interior, they're going to have to figure out ways more creatively under Minter to scheme up those pressures. So I thought just seeing, Derwin do that a little bit, and just kind of figuring out different ways to kind of get Bosa, Mack, Thule, Bud Dupree over the, last couple days going, if one would like switch inside or not, or stuff like that. I just thought that was like a good thing to see for the team in general, because they're going to need it.
Yeah, it was. Okay, Justin Timberlake in the chat already mentioning the one particular player that we're going to get to.
Real Justin Timberlake?
Yeah, I thought you were doing, aren't you in jail or being investigated for something? Anyway, not the guy in the chat. I just want to clarify for anyone. Brian gets into the joke too. Anyway, let's move on from that and get to Quentin Johnston today. So I'll start with the positive, which is that I started camp by saying he caught the first 2 passes of the day. Like, they immediately went to Quentin Johnston twice. I believe he won on a slant, then he won on either a corner or a comeback, something on the perimeter.
Because you're talking about last Wednesday?
No, I mean today.
Oh, today. Okay.
Well, so he's been, it seems, solid overall.
Yeah. I was just, where you talking about Popper, because Popper's said on Wednesday he was really good, and then obviously today.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So just specifically today, started strong, right? First 2 catches look good, and I genuinely mean this, and I try not to do this, and we try not to do this on this channel. I don't want to like over embellish or overhype something. I genuinely do think Quentin Johnston does move better and crisper and quicker and more fluid in and out of his breaks. Like there's a reason he's been having a strong start to camp, and it's not because like a complete luck. He genuinely does. I genuinely do believe he moves better. So whether that's working with Marvin Harrison Jr. over the summer or whatever he did, he does move better. And I had not seen practice. So I was not there day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. Okay. All I've been doing is hearing this. So I'm almost like waiting for him to show me that it's been wrong this whole time. And people are just like overhyping Quentin Johnston because it gets the clicks. No, I actually genuinely do believe he moves better. And he did on the play we're about to discuss, beat Christian Fulton down the field. Like you can go find my X Twitter account, whatever, and it's the one with 3,000 quote tweets for whatever reason. I can't imagine why. And he wins. He wins over Christian Fulton. The issue was the drop there, and look. Did many players? Did Hayden Hurst drop a pass today? Yeah. Do other players drop passes in practice? Absolutely. Quentin Johnston's not the only one to drop passes in camp today. It's just specifically like everything in one play about why a lot of Chargers fans are frustrated with Quentin Johnston, because I was actually just recording for Joe Walt. It was a great rep, great protection. I don't think there was any issue for Justin Herbert. It was a beautiful pass. Like it's perfect. You couldn't have simulated on a computer any better. Right over Christian Fulton, right into Quentin Johnston's hands, and he bobbles it and drops a touchdown, a big touchdown. It's not quite the Green Bay game drop. It was a bit more, difficult, a little bit more like over the right shoulder, catch on the left side, I think. But it was a drop that really just kind of sums up why we're all frustrated with Quentin Johnston. So is one drop a big deal? And is in practice, is it a big deal? No, but it's continuing that frustration of like, how did you not come down with that? Right. How did you not get that? It wasn't like it was that difficult of a catch. There's no sun in your eyes. It's not an all-pro corner covering you. You're not about to get hit. So it was just frustrating to see that he bobbled and did not come up with that. So not great. Fine on the day overall. Started strong. But that was frustrating. And I hate to say that it wipes out everything he did the rest of the day, but it feels like it does, because that was the moment. If Quentin Johnston makes that catch, a video of it, I'm not saying it changes the narrative, but like you feel so good about his day. Started strong. Look at that catch. Wow. But for him to not do that, it just feels like he is not, with him, I just feel like he's just not mentally always locked in. And I hope he strings together different practices that are better, but it was very, very frustrating to watch it happen again.
Yeah. So last Wednesday, I think Popper, wrote up his article and talked about how good QJ was last Wednesday. So, and then I think on Thursday was when the Chargers posted the clip of him in the end zone. The one I'm talking about, where he's sort of like, he caught the ball, but also like the defenders weren't going up to contest. It wasn't, the worst position for that. So then I went to Friday and I was like, let's. And I think technically, like you were saying, from a fluid athlete perspective, I think Sanjay Lal, working with him and doing drills with him, which he's talked about. I think he's talked about doing, kind of with QJ to sort of like open him up a little bit. I think he does fluidly move better, and like you said on that play today, he did beat the corner he was up against. And then it was kind of a similar play on Friday when I was there, where he gets to the end zone, he beats Zamari Walton, and then ultimately just kind of dropped it in the end zone. So I do think fluidly he moves better, and I would say from a route running perspective,
I cut you off for 1 second. Good. Sorry, it sounds like I guess we're not even being heard. Okay, so chat, can you let me know if I still sound like a robot? I have no issues on my end with connection, but it sounds like everyone is hearing it. So I don't know what that entails, but let me know.
Okay.
Because I'm talking to Alex live, no problem. And I can hear Alex, no problem. Do I still sound choppy? I still sound choppy.
All right. Well, should I just go back into what I was saying, or?
Okay, how does Alex sound? Alex, start talking.
Hello. I don't know. But anyway, what I was kind of going back to with Quentin Johnston is that it's, it's just tough to, like you said, not seeing him come down with that catch a little bit. It just, you want to see him complete that process and not have some of those focus drop issues. And I think even Steven came up, or the coaches came up to Steven after practice, not that the coaches came up to Steven, but the coaches, and DJ Chark and other players came up to Quentin Johnston to sort of kind of talk to him after that drop today. Cause, Quentin's, to some extent also frustrated with himself. Like he wants to, catch those balls himself. So it's not like he's not obviously trying. So yeah, it's a little frustrating, but I still think it's something he can work it out. He has looked better, but it's just like in a game scenario where there is that, full on contact that Harbaugh isn't even allowing in practice right now. How is it going to look? And right now, I would say it's still a work in progress catching the ball through contact.
Yeah. Okay, so it sounds like the audio is better now. Let me know if I'm also... It seemed to be fixed when Alex was talking. Hopefully, it's now fixed for me as well. I unplugged my mic and plugged it back in, which is the way you fix everything going back to... So yeah, hopefully that all gets fixed and remedied and whatnot. But we'll see. Again, it's one play. It's really not a particular big deal in a vacuum, but just overall, it is very, very frustrating. Sorry about that, chat. I don't know what happened there because it tells me when the connection is really bad. So I don't know if I don't know. Alex is streaming from a hotel, but that shouldn't be an issue. So I have no idea. Anywho, I have a thick Asian accent. Thank you, Jorge, I guess. You don't know me Asian. You think I have a thick Asian accent, dude. I could do that, but I would get in trouble.
I was going to say one more thing on Quentin. So on Friday, or that article Popper put out last week, where it was sort of like depth chart projections to some extent, and Popper said that the starting 11 personnel, trio to some extent, that he thinks by, not now, but by regular season, he thinks it'll be Josh Palmer, Ladd McConkey, and DJ Chark. McConkey playing out of the slot. So, obviously the coaching staff is going to make McConkey earn, those reps. They're not going to give him, obviously, the starting role. So I did see on Friday that Quentin Johnston and Cornelius Johnson and Brendan Rice and Ladd also were doing special teams tackling drills on Friday. Today, QJ was not doing them. It was just Ladd, Cornelius, and Brendan Rice working in that capacity. So I'm sort of curious where, they'll probably change it practice after practice. I don't think it's going to be, it's probably going to be fluid as time goes on. I don't think he's just going to, not play special teams, because if you're the third or fourth receiver on the roster, you'll likely have to. But it was something that I noticed that Popper says Chark is kind of ahead. Yeah. And so I did notice that a little bit for QJ as well. I did think Chark, both on Friday, I think it was, and then also today, looked pretty good. I wasn't necessarily, blown away by what he was doing, but I just think he kind of had a certain fluidity with Herbert that moved pretty well. There was a pass, I think, for first down in that red zone drill that Chark came down with, even though Herbert didn't place it perfectly. So it felt like they were always kind of reading each other a little bit. Some deep balls he caught on Friday and I think Saturday as well. So I would say Chark, from what I saw, is kind of over QJ on the depth chart. How long that holds, when McConkey starts getting all of the starting slot snaps, if that happens, we'll see. But right now, it just kind of seems like things are in flux until a week or two from now.
Yeah, I I don't really see, unless it's game specific for whatever reason, I don't see how QJ is cracking that starting three. In terms of
and it doesn't necessarily like matter that much because like the Chargers, Greg Roman, I mean, was 30th in the league in his tenure in terms of how many plays they ran out of 11 personnel, right? Yeah. So like when he was with the Ravens, so like they're not going to be in 11 personnel a ton, and you're going to see a lot of tight ends on the field. You're going to see a lot of 12, 21 personnel stuff. So I don't necessarily take that starting trio to mean like, oh, QJ's not going to play, because he's going to play, especially if there are injuries as well. Mm-hmm. So he's going to get reps. It's just a matter of kind of like what he does with them. And then that's why like, people in the comments saying like we're dwelling on the drop. It's not so much that, but it's like if you do have fewer opportunities, you kind of have to maximize those, right? And it's, particularly like in a live game environment, that's just where I think the concern lies when there is more contact and QJ kind of has to more adapt on the fly. And we're not really going to see that in training camp. We'll see it in the preseason. But, I think he has looked more fluid, certainly than he did last year, which is a testament to him working in the offseason, testament to the coaching staff as well. But just got to catch it when you can.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same discussion we had last year about Zion, where it's like, okay, the film's great, looks good, great. Oh, there goes the sack and costs the drive, and then they lose the game. Not that that's the reason they lost the game. No. But it was always just at the inopportune moment, there was a Zion Johnson sack allowed. So it's kind of like that. And then again, same first round, expectations, right? You should have these things sorted out by now. That was second year for Zion. This will be second year for Quentin. So hopefully he can put it together. We'll see. I haven't seen any. When you saw the Quentin drops, were they also down the field, or were they like a curl slant?
Down the field. Yeah. So that is, and Steven, I was just talking about this with him, where he even notices on that drop, like, and you pointed it out, like it was Fulton who was in coverage on him, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's just like a perfect ball that Herbert threw in there, but like he has to kind of like reach out for it, right? And that, more so than like bringing it in here, it feels like from what I've seen in training camp, that's been more of the issue when he has been like reaching out for some of these deep passes that are catchable. And that was the case in the Green Bay game. That was the case. The one against New England, right? Mm-hmm. Was also kind of a similar nature. So I think that is more something to monitor than like every, it's not like he's going to drop the ball like every time, but it is those tough adjustment catches where, Herbert puts a dime on him, but like he has to kind of like reach out for it more so than like, oh, it was like, kind of a perfectly thrown slant to him. So I do think it has been more down the field operation that is the concern.
Yeah. So I guess, the good news, it's the short stuff has been hopefully figured out in that regard. We'll see when you have to beat someone, press man coverage, win on a slant, score in the red zone, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's a bit more difficult to simulate a 40-yard bomb down the sideline, corner of the end zone. But again, you gotta come up with those. So
and credit. I think it was somebody posted on Twitter. I think it was Bolt Lounge, who I was actually with today, and gave me his VIP guest pass, which I really appreciate. So he was the one who posted on Twitter first that QJ was working on the jugs machine after practice. So I saw that myself, in addition to, I think it was Disley and maybe Palmer out there as well. So, QJ is clearly working, but we'll kind of see how this progresses.
Yeah, I mean that's obviously very good to hear. You definitely want to do that. You definitely want to do that when all the fans have watched you make that drop too. I don't know how long fans are there, right? But it's good to do that. And he wasn't doing that last year, I believe. At least pretty far into training camp, he was not working the jugs machine, which I think Popper pointed out. And we were like, I don't know if that's the best idea. And maybe I wish he kind of did. So, guys, we're going to take your questions in just a bit. I see 2 super chats. They're not questions, but we will definitely get to those. And then some of your questions in just a bit. Alex, any final observations, thoughts on how things went today? Anything that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that has stuck out to me Friday through today is Jordan McFadden, just kind of all on his own, sort of. Today wasn't as much like work, I would say, in like because Saturday he was straight up like motioning in formation and running back and forth across the line, which was crazy to see for a guy that's 300 pounds, coming out and basically turning around to Herbert like, I'm open. So that's fun to see. But he was by himself again, like working with coaches, which again I think as far as we talk about like that final fullback extra tight end spot between him, Ben Mason, and you can kind of throw Benson and Hines like into this as well, because you're probably having one, maybe two of those guys maybe that can crack the roster. I probably lean towards one, and right now it does look like it is McFadden. And we were even talking about this in the car yesterday, the three of us, but like how Pat Ricard came over from Baltimore and was a converted defensive tackle to fullback, and Harbaugh mentioned in his presser on, I think it was, Saturday, that Ortiz was supposedly the one who recommended to try, McFadden in that fullback extra tight end role. So that was something I had as my like not biggest takeaway from these 3 days, but certainly it does seem like there is an active like attempt to get him as ready for that in the season as they possibly can. And I think that's definitely a little bit different than what we thought. Certainly when I wrote up my 53-man roster article, and I had Ben Mason making it. And right now, I kind of barely see Ben Mason, to be totally honest with you. I think he's really second, third team, if you want to talk about like that tight end / fullback spot. Not that McFadden has been like, working with like first and second team all the time. Saturday was really the first time we saw him like in those 11 and 11 7-on-7 drills. But that's been like my biggest thing from him. And if they can get like McFadden to be like a legit fullback, that is just such a win for this offense in general with, what we've seen that guy do. And obviously he, Harbaugh's mentioned him for center. He's working at guard, right? So just having a player who can do a bunch of things on your offense, depending on if either A, the offensive line is injured, or B, you just have this weapon that you can use.
Yeah. I've never in my time watching training camp seen an offensive lineman work by himself catching a football the entire period, which is usually about 10 minutes unless they're doing something shorter. But when they have those break off moments when they're at 10 minutes for special teams or offensive line drills or whatever it is, McFadden was by himself with another coach, just catching passes like over and over and over 4, 5, 6 times a minute. I mean, he was just catching passes, run a little bit, maybe turn around and catch one. It was unlike anything I had seen. I'm sure Ricard has done something like that with the Ravens. And I'm sure like maybe they've had some players before go out and do that occasionally. But to see an entire 10-minute period dedicated to McFadden just catching passes, not running like a go ball or a slant route or anything ridiculous. Like he's just kind of jogging out and turning around, but he's working on catching the football while everyone else is doing their thing. It's just by himself. It was fascinating. As far as Ben Mason goes, he's the fullback that they have, and what he's designated as is the least used as a fullback. It feels like when I'm watching the plays.
Right.
I didn't get into a ton of running today. I don't think it felt very like quick, and they were moving through a lot of more passing today. But it felt like I saw Ben Mason maybe once or twice out there. It's one of those moments where you go, wait, well, who is that? Because you had to figure out who the number of the player was. I'm like, oh, that's Ben Mason. I didn't know. By the time practice was over, I knew Hines, I knew Disley, I knew Benson, obviously McFadden, and Mason was really not out there. So yeah, good call mentioning McFadden. It's a fascinating thing that's developing, and I'm curious how much they lean into it, because he's about the same weight as Patrick Ricard was coming out of college. He runs a 4.99. Like there is definitely something here. And before we all forget it, let's give a little credit to Kellen Moore, because last year McFadden had 12 backfield reps. They were kind of leaning into this. So a little bit of credit there where credit is due. But if they're going to full on almost convert him, to a fullback-like role, it's fascinating. He's extremely athletic. In college, he was very nasty. And if that suits him very well as the sixth guy or the fullback or whatever, I'm all for it. So, yeah, Kevin, basically what I'm trying to say is McFadden is better than Brock Bowers. So I'm glad we're on the same page there.
Yeah, the other thing I kind of like tight end fullback takeaway is like, I would sort of say, I don't know how you or Steven feel about this, but like to me, biggest undrafted free agent winner, I think so far it's Luke Benson. I agree. I obviously know you pushed the Luke Benson agenda, but he's certainly been kind of the most undrafted guy that's like consistently rotating in with like second team. And I think he has looked a little bit more fluid catching passes than say like Zach Hines, who I suppose is like his supposed competition there for like a final either tight end roster spot or tight end practice squad spot. But I thought Luke Benson has looked really good. So haven't noticed a ton of other like free agent undrafted free agent guys that have like stuck out other than like a couple of like the secondary guys who we see doing like special teams drills and special teams defense, particularly like third unit or just regular defense in the third unit. But I do shout out like Luke Benson is like sort of the biggest undrafted free agent winner of the week.
Yeah, today's the only first day I've watched him, right? And I don't think he caught a ton of passes, maybe one or two today. But I believe the previous day he had 4 passes caught. And good for him. It's definitely him and Hines definitely have 2 different roles. Hines is the tight end. Benson is more like Steven Anderson when Lombardi had him that first year and got to deploy him all over. Like that seems to be the role. And that's very, very valuable. And he's by far the most athletic of those undrafted free agent guys. So he's very athletic, good role. He's catching passes. He's involved a lot with the first team. Because of that athleticism, he's going to play a lot on special teams, I'm sure. So far, looking great. Thomas Harper also had an interception today. Easton Stick just threw it down the field. Because they're not jumping and they can't do contested catches or whatever, Brendan Rice didn't go up for the football. Right. It almost looked like an intentional interception because they were working this exact drill with the DBs right before they jumped into that 7-on-7 or 11-on-11, where they almost had to like run down the field and catch an interception over their shoulder. And that's exactly what Thomas Harper did 5 minutes after he just practiced it, which is really good, right? That's a very cool teaching, learning moment right there. But that looked really good. As far as the other undrafted free agents, I think that's mostly it. Hines had a couple passes today. He's a big dude. Like I noticed, I'm like, oh, wow, Zach Hines is a really big dude. So, yeah, I think overall pretty good. They're even letting the quarterback from Augustana play, which was a surprise.
Bauman?
I did. Yeah. I've seen Tom a couple of times, so that was honestly a surprise.
So he's been kind of, from what I saw Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, like kind of, I would say they've had like off days where like he and like Duggan will kind of switch like who has like third, fourth team. Duggan got a little bit more active Friday. Bauman was a little bit more active Saturday, but like, overall he's still definitely the fourth guy on the roster. But, he was a little interesting. Obviously not going to make the roster, unfortunately. Although I did think it was interesting in the QB room today. Stick finally got the gold jersey. So he
hit the other guys.
Herbert begged in his press conference for Stick to get the gold jersey and the other guys to get the gold jersey. So he's not the only one wearing it. So
I didn't hear that. Okay.
Yeah, he mentioned that in OTAs and minicamp, and then Harbaugh said, "No, it's just you." But then Stick got it today. So
nice. All right, we're gonna move on to some questions and get out of here in under an hour if we can. We do have a super sticker from Aether. Thank you very much for that one. I think you meant to follow it up with this. It says, "What's up, my boys? My vacation week. Super excited to be here. The vibes are awesome. Now at Chargers camp, let's go. If you're at camp, that's awesome. If you were at camp today, great. Definitely say hi. Yeah. I'll be there a couple more times, I think."
Yeah. No, I mean, shout out to, everyone who, came up to me at camp. I know Steven obviously was kind of on the field with the media credential, but, a couple people came up to me and Tyler today. A couple people came up to me throughout the week. I was like the in terms of people that like wanted selfies and like, wanted stuff like that. I was like the Tobey Maguire to the director's Leonardo DiCaprio, I would say.
Okay.
So, it was nice.
Is what you're saying. Didn't
yeah.
Tobey like okay.
No, I was very B or C list at the function compared to some of the other.
Never, always.
Some of the other like A-listers we have, but no, it was nice to like see people, and I've never even had someone who come up to me like, "Hey, you're the guy from the podcast." So that was nice. It doesn't happen in Florida or Antigua where people cover the Chargers. So it was nice to see that, and meet up with a bunch of the fans. So.
Yeah, it was really, really nice. For those who don't know, Alex and I also met for the first time, even though we've been writing at Bolt Beat.
Hold on, should we get the picture of me, you, and Steven from
Sure, yeah. Go ahead and share your screen while I'll cycle through. I'll cycle through some of these. For Make the Transition, who recently had a kid, gonna watch from the start. Love y'all. Bolt up. Yes, watch from the start, and then skip over the part where we sound like robots. Which I don't know. It's mostly just us talking about Quentin Johnston. So maybe you can just skip it all together and just know that that's that. Alex is pulling up a photo. There's us.
This was the official meetup of the Big Three, and then Tyler posted. This is the
right there.
The comparison. Yeah. So
Steven's very offended that he has to be Chin Po, but I'm the short guy with one eye. So like I think we're okay there.
All right, look, we have to address this because people think that because I'm the one who's standing in the back that I'm like the shortest member. Like this is just categorically not true.
Yeah, Alex is at least 3 or 4 inches taller than me.
When I met Steven for the first time on Friday when he drove down here, he went, "Oh, you look taller than I thought you were," and I was like, "Yeah, same, man. You also look taller than I thought you were." He's fucking 6'4", so
yeah.
But yeah, no, it was nice to finally meet up in person. 7 years I've known Tyler, 6 years I've known Steven. So yeah, it was finally nice to get that together.
Yeah, definitely awesome for sure. Then Arjun, if you haven't met him, is like 6'3", 6'4". Oh, yeah. And he's very like skinny, so he just looks like he just stands.
Well, Steven straight up said that he thinks Arjun's like bigger than him now.
Probably. The dude's just super tall. So he's
still growing.
Tall, me, and then another tall person. Maybe Katzen's not that tall. I don't know. Good question, LDE Bruin. Is Palmer on a snap count? I haven't seen many highlight clips from him and Herbert. I don't think he was targeted a ton today, but I also was he out there as much today?
He was, I thought he was running with the first team. He was off to the side like a little bit. I saw at times just him, like Johnson and Chark were not doing as many like drills in terms of like wide receiver stuff. So I did see, I think it was either Friday or Saturday. They were having Palmer run like basically sprints, kind of like up and down the field as like doing sort of like a conditioning drill with him. And so I think Sanjay back in either OTAs or minicamp basically said like, yeah, this is the most reps Palmer's done so far. So they've just been steadily ramping that up throughout like the process. And so I think, obviously they don't need to like push Palmer like right now. But I think probably by like end of August, like I think that's kind of when they want to have him back to his like normal role or normal volume. But, I think they're taking it very cautiously with him as they have been for the last, 2 months.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. Didn't feel like a full go today. No concern, just not like a full go out there. All right, I will let you have this one. How's Kamane Vidal doing? I'm big on him. I think for me personally, I saw a lot of receiving work, but I'm just going to remove myself and let you go.
Get back in here. No. So he's been basically with Spiller on, I would say, second or third team, depending on like they sort of have been like rotating there. Because Jared Patterson, and this is like the biggest surprise to me of like training camp, that Jared Patterson is just like pretty confidently in the lead for like third back behind Edwards and Dobbins. And so Edwards has not been doing team drills. So Dobbins has been in and out of team drills because he got a little nicked up on Saturday. But I thought it was just interesting that, like, you know, and Roman mentioned Patterson first in his press conference in terms of talking about Dobbins, non-Dobbins or non-Dobbins or Edwards backs. He mentioned Patterson is the first guy that came to his mind. So I think it is Vidal and Spiller right now for what looks like to be the fourth spot. Now, I don't know like how often or like how long Patterson is like going to hold down that third spot for, but he's the third running back on the team right now. And then he's been getting consistently first team reps with the health statuses of like the other two running backs, kind of like, not that anything's like directly wrong with them, but as Harbaugh said, both of them are kind of like, recovering and like they're taking it a little easier with them. So, he had a couple catches like here and there, but I wouldn't say it's been like, bombs away for either him or Spiller. Spiller probably has had some more negative plays, I guess, kind of, but it's hard to tell again until the pads come on. But I know Spiller got stripped on either Friday or Saturday by Shane Lee. I forget which practice that was. But, it hasn't been like, oh man, here he comes. I think it's going to be more like the preseason is probably like where we'll see this Vidal Spiller like competition, if you want to call it that, sort of get settled.
Yeah, again, like you said, I was surprised that Patterson had this. Like, I don't know what they've seen, because it's not even like there's film last year with him and the Chargers and him, performing well, and I can extrapolate that over 16, 17 games. No, they just really like him. So I don't know if it was a prior evaluation. What? I mean, I liked him out of college. Don't get me wrong, but it's been a few years, and now you're a different player. And
I also talked about this with like Steven, where it's like there's obviously a connection between Roman and JK and Gus Edwards. There's no obvious connection on the coaching staff towards Jared Patterson. So he is obviously a little bit more of a veteran, more experienced than Vidal or Spiller, but I think for him to have it outright as like first team reps, that's kind of interesting. I do wonder if they trust him a little bit more as like a blocker right now as well. Whereas like Spiller, Spiller's done like, pretty good with blitz pickups in the past. Vidal, obviously, pretty small guy. So like they're, I think they probably trust him the most to make the least mistakes, certainly out of the backfield right now. And I think that is contributing to him playing as much as he has been.
Yeah, again, very, very much so a surprise. I don't really know how it's all going to play out with him, because that's the biggest wild card, because like you said, they didn't draft him. They didn't even sign him during this regime. There's no prior connection. And yet he's out there. Like, if he's the guy that gave up the sack because Derwin James was blitzing and he didn't pick it up, well, it's because he was out there with the team that was going up against Derwin James, because he's out there with some of the starters. So really big surprise there. Spiller is firmly not in one of the first three running backs, if you include Gus and JK, obviously. So, but he is on special teams. So they're practicing special teams today. He's out there with the first team. JT Woods and some other players were working as gunners at a different portion of the field. So while Darius Davis and McConkey were fielding punts, JT Woods was with a couple of other guys practicing as a gunner, getting past blockers, etc. I don't know if that, because they're in a rotation working as gunners over there, I don't really know who's like first, who's second, who's the other guy. I don't know. But at least Spiller seems to have worked towards a coverage on punt return role, on punts, role. So I don't know if that translates to a roster spot, but it can't hurt. But again, like we've been talking about, he's not even in the top three of running backs. But if by all the end of this, he's just an available running back, he could definitely still make it.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about Jim Harbaugh's prepared statement on injuries?
Oh, go for it. I did not realize there was a prepared statement on injuries.
No. So like,
what he's been saying.
Yeah. Well, basically before anybody could like ask about like, oh, how's Slater like, doing or any of that, he had what he called a written statement, before And it's, Chris Rim posted on Twitter, but basically his like he admitted like his go-to phrase will be working through something, this year, like if he's not going to disclose it. And then he said, if I'm not a medical professional, consider me guilty as charged. So he did shout us out by proxy today.
I'll take it.
I just thought it was interesting because obviously that kerfuffle happened on Saturday.
Yeah.
But wasn't necessarily like Popper was trying to dig for like, oh man, tell me like exactly, which finger is broken and then like how long he'll be out for. It was like, he's giving confusing answers as to like, is he injured? Is this a rest day? Like, what's the deal? And so, I think Harbaugh's even keeping like that stuff pretty close to the vest as it seems right now.
Yeah. Do we need to know? No. Does it really matter? I don't think so, unless it's a serious injury.
Yeah, I mean, and they don't technically have to disclose injuries until like September, I think is like when that starts.
Exactly. And even last year with whatever Slater popped up on the injury report with, they never ever said he has a double high ankle sprain. There was never a team reported. So, there'll be KG, there's this, there's that. I think he even talks like, oh, everyone's kind of working through something. It's like, okay, I don't know what we're supposed to do. But yeah, that's just how it will be. And it's fine. Maybe it affects our roster predictions, but whatever. It's their team. It's their health of the players.
Right.
And Slater was at least out there in what seems to be more a higher capacity than he was before. So whatever it was before, it's not like it's a setback. He took a step forward today.
Yeah, because he was not on the field on Saturday at all, and then then he came back today. Was in some of those 11-on-11 drills, and then like they sort of pulled him like pretty early, and then that's when they started putting around the musical chairs of like where Joe Alt is going to be and Pipkins and Salyer. So
yeah. Alrighty, we have about 2.5 minutes left until the end of our live stream. I want to get in under an hour, so we're going to close out with that discussion that we just had about injuries, and I guess Slater had to use the bathroom at some point earlier today too, which I totally get it.
I don't know if I was supposed to say that.
Well,
that is what
too late.
Told me, so.
Your fault.
Well, I can't. Much like Sean Slater, I cannot take it back. So.
Yes, it is out there. You just really stunk it up. All right. Yeah. That's going to do it for us today at the Guilty as Charged podcast. Steven is going to have his on the field notebook recap of this. If you really want to know exactly how many reps somebody lost or won today, Steven's going to go through all of that. He's got everything written down, all the rotation stuff. This is just more of our general live reaction. He's going to have a video tonight. So definitely watch that. I will certainly watch that because he got a really good view. Got to be right there front and center with all this stuff. So that's going to do it for us. Guys, take care. As always, Bolt up.